Prince Robert, we have this extraordinary sale coming up at Sotheby's, and it's really to celebrate the 40 years of ownership of your family of Château La Mission Haut-Brion. It's so exciting both from the historical point of view and the future. And please tell us something about the traditions in your family and how you feel about owning one of the greatest wine properties in France or anywhere.
First of all, thank you for hosting me here at Sotheby's today. We're celebrating a 40-year period of Dillon family stewardship. Obviously, I run a family company now, fourth generation. I think we have 7 generations that have actually been to these different estates, starting at Haut-Brion, obviously. But we acquired the estate of La Mission Haut-Brion in 1983 under the auspices of my mother, Joan de Mouchy, and her husband, Philippe de Mouchy. I was lucky enough to be there, actually, for the acquisition. I was brought over by my mother to witness the signature of the acquisition. I use the word stewardship because we are part of a 2,000-year history of exceptional winemaking at this estate. And as you've said many times, La Mission is one of the legends, one of the stars of the great wines of Bordeaux. It was not included in the 1855 classification just by the fact that it was a smaller estate. Today, La Mission represents 28 hectares, so we produce about 25 hectares or so produce the red wines, and the 3 hectares for the tiny production of white wines, where we only produce about 500 cases a year. We are celebrating 40 years of stewardship, and our desire has been to put the focus on what we have brought to the estate, or how we've been able to accentuate the excellence and the history that already existed there.
It is both historic and, of course, with great family connections. But you are someone who's always looked into the future. I always think of you in terms of innovation and the way you marry traditions and, if you like, the legacy side and the innovations and the new things. And you've done so much in the recent years. Tell us something about that.
We don't have to invent stories at Haut-Brion or La Mission because they are there. And so part of my job, I believe, is to be able to accentuate those stories. So when we bought La Mission as a family in 1983, there was a lot of fear that Domaine Clarence Dillon, as a family company coming with the Haut-Brion background and neighboring property, that we would change the style of the wines of La Mission. My desire, when I became involved later, but it was also the desire of Jean-Bernard Delmas, who was the winemaker that you knew very well, was to continue to have these differences of styles between the two estates, maybe even accentuate them. And so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We did have to do a lot of work in the vineyards.
Well, we all have, of course, our favorite vintages, but one of the things that's always struck me about La Mission, it is completely fabulous in the so-called great years, but it's also extraordinary in the in-between or lesser years or less powerful years. It has amazing consistency with, of course, explosively fine wines when the weather is perfect and absolutely excellent. And the thing that also strikes me very much about La Mission is its highly individual character, which you've absolutely preserved. And it has so much personality that it is quite recognizable and utterly irresistible. So you have the extraordinary white and red wines of La Mission, and of course La Mission Haut-Brion Blanc. But you have also done something quite unusual, again as a family business, and I'm very much pro family businesses for fine wine. You've gone out of your area of Pessac-Léognan recently and gone over to the right bank of Bordeaux to Saint-Emilion.
It is very different because we don't have any history there. We have a history for the individual estates that we acquired, and we acquired 3 different estates over the years, starting in 2011. We are creating a new wine, a new style of wine. It's more like creating a sassicaia of tomorrow or an opus. So we have this extraordinary, contrary to them, they didn't know what they could do at the time. We know that the parcels and the potential is there already because we have these 3 first growths of Saint-Emilion that we put together. But we needed to just be able to understand the patchwork and how these could work together. And every estate that we've added has brought something new to the depth and the complexity of the wines that we're making there. The reason we called it Quintus is because we already had 4 of the great wines that you've mentioned, the 2 white wines, Haut-Brion Blanc, La Mission Blanc, La Mission Rouge, and Haut-Brion Rouge. And Quintus being the 5th is what the Romans called their 5th child. And so my idea was that, we were having a 5th wine joining the family, and we all know that we believe our children have the same potential and quality, and they're all on an equal playing field. And so this was our new Dillon family child, and that we were going to make sure that it came and reached the same potential as our other estate.
The other, I think, thrilling, again, aspect of this sale is that we've got all formats, the bottle sizes, and I'm pretty passionate about large formats when you've got the right guests and everything. There's something both about the longevity, and it's an extra plus, I think, large formats. We're more used to large formats in red wines, but in this sale we have some absolutely outstanding and highly unusual, considering the very small amount of white that you make at La Mission Haut-Brion Blanc and the old vintages of Laville Haut-Brion. We have large formats also of the whites, which is a particular passion of mine because they're so highly individual and they go marvelously with all sorts of food. I always think particularly with Japanese sashimi and things. So how come I'm so glad you let us have some of these wonderful old wines too, the old Laville Haut-Brions. We didn't even know that they still existed.
You've always been a big fan of the Lavilles, and I remember having tasting some of these. I mean, even in this case, you obviously knew them far better than I did when I got started in the business, so you were able to educate me about some of the older Lavilles, but I remember enjoying some of the old 74s, 76s with you over the years, and of course the 89, the fabled 89. But yes, at Haut-Brion, La Mission was the name of the white wine between 1927 and 1929, and when the Voltner family, our predecessors, acquired a parcel called Laville next to their white wine, they changed the name to Laville. So I think because Laville was probably better known as a name at that time, back in the end of the 20s. So from a branding perspective, and just to be able to tell our story and the fact that we didn't have different facilities, I decided to bring the La Mission name back, bring the old design of the label back also, and just keep it simple, so we have the white wine of La Mission is called La Mission again since 2009. We only produce 500 cases approximately a year of that wine, and so it's a tiny production. And so you describe some of the characteristics, but one of the things is that it does have this extraordinary aging potential, which a lot of the white wines in the world do not, which obviously comes from this Sémillon-Sauvignon blend, but also the potential of our terroir. So it really are, when you talk about, in the positive manner, a garage-type style wine, because it's such a tiny production, and the labor-intensive element that goes into making those wines is massive, including us going into the vines when it's still dark at night to harvest the wines before the sun rises to make sure that it's cool enough. I mean, we've done some crazy things over the years, which are continuing. These are very small yields.
It certainly pays off in the glass, I can tell you.
It's unique. The really large format bottles are unique, and I can say I collect them myself. We only produce also limited editions of those. We have maybe 10 bottles produced or 5 bottles in a larger format. So, if you have one of 5 bottles, not only are they unique by their style, but they're unique by the rarity of the number that are actually potentially in the market. And most of them we only consume at the estate.
It's the chance of a lifetime. It's really, really exciting. There's another aspect to this sale as well, that tucked in between and amongst all these historic and more of today's time wines, we also have some extraordinary experiences. which reflect what you've done in terms of places to visit connected with your chateau, and also restaurants. That is an opportunity for real wine lovers who want to see what you're doing at the properties themselves. We have lots that will reflect that. And it includes, in one case, your great 2 Michelin star restaurant in Paris, the Clarence.
Le Clarence. An extraordinary history, thanks to our connection with Haut-Brion to gastronomic traditions and a restaurant here in London. And we opened the restaurant in 2015 in Paris, which became one of the most lauded restaurants in the world pretty much immediately. 2 stars within the first 2 years. The chef Christophe Pellet is exceptional. And it's become an embassy of the great wines of France principally. But also within the first 4 years, we were named one of the 50 best restaurants of the world, which I'm particularly proud of.
Absolutely. As we've got a bottle of La Mission here, and luckily some in our glass, before we look at this, it's the 2008, actually, which I've always loved. I've always thought it's got a slightly wood smoky feel about it, and I love that smell, sort of really great wood smoke. There's also always the cigar element of the terroir that is there. It makes me immediately actually think of a meal because it goes so well, but there's something slightly exotic and spicy, I think, particularly on the nose. It's so succulent and perfect balance. La Mission always has perfect balance because the tannins are always there, but there's always so much fruit to balance the tannins.
But this seems very, very youthful. It doesn't have the density of some of the big vintages of La Mission, whether it's the 2000s or the 2005s or the 2009s or the 10s that come later. But it has the expression. And I've always found, as far as the differences of style of La Mission Haut-Brion, that you tend to have this velvet element of La Mission with this depth and concentration of fruit that you may not have in the same way at Haut-Brion, that tends to be slightly more delicate, slightly more intellectual. It's different, it's a different expression.
Is there any particular message you'd like to say to all these people who love these wines, the whole La Mission family, and now those who are really getting to know Quintus? Would you like to give them any particular advice or message to all the potential buyers at this sale?
I would say no, the message is literally in the bottle.
In the bottle.
So, cheers, thank you for making time for me here in London and for your team also, and I look forward to sharing some of these extraordinary bottles of Quintus and La Mission over the month of November.
Thank you.